Well, sustainability is the big focus for the country's largest auto manufacturer, Maruti Suzuki. They've got prototypes of EVs over here, battery-powered vehicles, but it's so many more things that they're looking at. Joining us now, Mr. Shashank Srivastava. He's a senior executive director dealing with marketing and sales. We've spoken in the past about safety. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But this prototype and what it means is pretty much part of the transition of Maruti for the future. What does that transition look like?
Yeah, so the entire industry is actually going through transformation, not just in terms of technology, but in terms of regulations related to emission and safety. So there is a consensus in the industry that going forward, electric vehicles will be mainstream, largely in response to that the cost of producing ICE vehicles with the new regulatory requirements and emission will be very high. And therefore, we are also seeing this transition in Maruti Suzuki. So we believe also that there will be a transition to electric vehicle, but what is not in consensus is when it will happen.
So the question, when will it happen?
So the question is not whether, it is when.
Right.
And the when part is a little complicated because it's still an evolving field.
Right.
But what the general consensus is among the analysts and industry experts is that by 2030, we'll probably see in the Indian passenger vehicle industry about 17 to 20% penetration of electric vehicles.
So it's interesting because your strategy isn't limited to electric vehicles. I mean, that's one
right.
part of it.
That's right.
You've got EVs, cleaner fuels, including biogas and hybrid as well.
Absolutely.
So now we're walking towards your sustainability zone.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about what it is that you're trying to project over here beyond EVs themselves.
Yes, so as you rightly pointed out, EV's penetration may not be 100% because that inflection point might be reached a little later, specifically when the battery cost comes down and when electricity is available and produced through more cleaner methods. Now in the interim period, and I said 20% by 2030, but if you do a quick calculation, Vishnu, between today till 2030, will probably be India passenger vehicle sale will probably be about 44 million, out of which about 3.5 million will be EVs.
Right.
What happens to the balance 41 million vehicles? Do you not have to reduce the emissions with them? Yes, you have to, and they are the majority. 41 million versus 3.5 million of electric vehicles. So what Maruti believes is that we have to make special efforts. The industry has to make special efforts that in this intermediate period, till the time when EVs become mainstream, we need to be technology agnostic to reduce emission. And that's what we are trying to do. For example, you see the WagonR here is the flex fuel. So it's something which can take up to 85% ethanol blended in the fuel. That's one way. You have a CNG. Then you have the CNG vehicle is there, where, yes, and the Grand Vitara, which is the strong hybrid. So you have a mix of flex fuel, CNG, the hybrids, and that is Maruti's plan of how to bring down the emission levels in the intervening period.
You were telling me something very interesting.
Yeah.
That there is a serious investment by Maruti in a lot of what will make your cars more sustainable. For example, batteries.
Yes.
You are investing 10,000 odd crore rupees.
Yes.
Into battery manufacturing in India.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So as we were mentioning, for the electric vehicles, the adoption rate will clearly depend on, will be different for different category of cars, but clearly it will depend on the cost of acquisition of the vehicle.
Right.
And one of the reasons why the battery electric vehicle penetration in India is not so high is because the cost of acquisition is high, and secondly, because the charging infrastructure is not fully developed in India, giving rise to what is known as range anxiety among consumers.
Right.
So the unique thing about battery electric vehicles is that almost 50% of the cost of the vehicle is battery cost.
Correct.
So if you want to reduce the total price of the vehicle, you have to reduce the cost. Which
How
means,
does that happen?
So you will have to reduce the battery cost. And one of the big ways of doing it is by localization. And localization means production in India, and that is much cheaper than importing. And that's what Suzuki is doing. We have, as you rightly pointed out, investing 10,000 crores in BEV and battery production. That's localization, which should bring down the cost, should help us increase the penetration and the adoption of EVs in our country.
Let's talk about biogas
Yeah.
and cleaner fuels. How is Maruti headed in that direction?
Yeah, so cleaner fuel, CNG for example.
This is a CNG vehicle, is
Yes,
it?
yes. This
Right.
is the CNG. It's not yet launched. It's going to be launched in CNG. This vehicle, CNG vehicles, obviously a much cleaner fuel, giving a larger fuel efficiency. Also cheaper on to purchase in the international market, and thereby reducing the foreign exchange outflow. Clearly a national objective. So CNG is one area where we have worked. We have 14 of our models are CNG. In fact, 22% of our sales is now CNG. And in the vehicles where we have CNG, it's about 35-36% sales CNG. Same, we'll hopefully be launching the flex fuel once the regulations regarding them are regarding flex fuel are put in place. And therefore, and also the hybrid. This Grand Vitara you see here, the strong hybrid, in the urban areas, 40 to 55% of the time it works as EV on
let's
battery.
talk about this car.
Yeah. So it gives a fuel efficiency of like 27, 28 kilometers to the liter.
Right.
And in city conditions. In fact, it gives you probably more in the city than in the highways, which is just the reverse of ICE vehicles.
Right.
Because in the city, you keep on charging the battery because you keep applying the brakes very often. Regenerative braking.
Right.
So that's great option for India, especially because the range anxiety is not there. You don't require an external charging.
And that's a huge factor.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
battery charging points for a pure EV, it's a problem in India.
Absolutely.
So what is Maruti's vision of the future when there is greater EV penetration? Our highways will need charging points.
Yes.
Homes will need charging points.
Yes.
How do you see that happening?
Yes, so it's going to be a long, drawn process. Clearly, the government is helping. They are also helping in setting up in the public sector the charging infrastructure, as also many private companies are there. And we are also trying to develop an ecosystem. We are also trying to develop an ecosystem by which we can, integrate all these things which are available regarding charging infrastructure for our consumer convenience. And also, Vishnu, you might be wondering, many companies have brought in electric vehicles earlier. Now the charging infrastructure doesn't exist. So it creates that anxiety in consumers and certainly inconvenience. And I can tell you, between optics and customer convenience, Maruti Suzuki will always choose, 100 times of 100 will choose customer convenience.
There is very serious engineering involved, whether it's EVs, whether it's hybrid fuels, or even your vehicles which are strong hybrid. How has Maruti gone about that engineering challenge? Because it's a change of mindset, it's a change of technology, and obviously quality is the highest.
So
Maruti doesn't fail. So you have to live up to that.
Absolutely. So that's a big challenge, and as you rightly pointed out, it starts with people. So you have to get the right people. You have to train them. You have to motivate them to stay and do, And I think a lot of youngsters which we have now in our engineering R&D, they are like quite focused, and actually they take it also as a mission to quickly produce vehicles or at least help in producing vehicles which are emission friendly. The EVX which we saw, that's what's in common terminology in electric vehicles called the newborn platform.
Will we ever see it in India?
Yeah, this will be by 2024-25 is when it will be actually be
manufactured in
India and produced and sold in India. Of course, today what you saw was a global unveiling, so it will be available across the. So this platform is actually made specifically for electric vehicles. Electric vehicles have an issue because the battery is heavy.
Yes.
So you generally when you put that battery in a normal ICE vehicle, it's not really designed for that. So that's a born, as they say, a born new platform. So it's a platform specially created for electric vehicle. Gives you a larger wheelbase, and you saw that the wheelbase is larger. and that gives you a good flexibility in terms of designing the interior space.
Right.
Great flexibility.
Right. And a final question which a lot of people would want to ask, the safety of batteries themselves.
Yes.
Built into the structure of the vehicle.
Yes.
How is that a key part of what it is that you're trying to do?
Yeah, so obviously there are standards prescribed, there are regulations regarding the battery, and of course safety is a big priority. So obviously all the batteries which we will use will absolutely adhere to all the regulatory requirements.
Thank you so much, sir,
Thank
for
you very
speaking
much.
to us.
Thank you.
There you have it, an idea of what Maruti Suzuki is doing. They're absolutely huge when it comes to, cars across sectors, but the EV space, the hybrid fuel space, and also strong hybrids in the interim period is what they're looking at. There is no option about moving to cleaner fuels, more sustainable fuels. It's not just about Maruti or any other car company, it's about our country, and it's about our sustainable development goals. And it's wonderful to see that this Auto Expo is focusing so much on something which is a national requirement.